everyone totally bummed out about kids not going back to school? Cabral, Hannah, Alan.
I am. So is Gracie.
I know.
Wanted to go back.
Yeah.
Well, if they went back, how many days would they have before the summer break?
21.
Well, I was gonna say there's only 9. Well, there's 2 PA days in there too, George.
So
So
it's 19.
19 days of school, but that's
Yeah.
like track and field, graduation, fun day, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, they don't do a whole lot at the end of the year, especially the last week. I
No.
just kind of was thinking the arrangements that would have to be put in place to accommodate them for, roughly 15 to 19 days of in class. I think like they're looking at is, I think the kids would prefer to be able to go to the summer camps and all that kind of stuff.
Anyways, we got to get started, folks. It's 5. Excuse me. So can I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Ma, that the special meeting of the Council of Township of Springwater of June 2nd, 2021 come to order at 5 p.m. All those in favor? It is carried. Due to COVID, Council is taking the necessary steps to limit in-person meetings. As such, this is being zoomed and streamed with council and staff. You can watch the meeting live on the township's website at www.springwater.ca. You can listen to it by phone during the meeting by calling 647-558-0588 and using the ID 890-6001-8666 and the pound sign. And if you do want to watch it after the meeting, watch the live stream, you can access it on the township's YouTube channel, accessible through the website. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest, council? All right, seeing none, I'll now call upon Carrie Waymar, to provide council with a presentation on community safety and well-being plan. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for having me here tonight. So, I think I need to share my screen. Let me do that. Okay, are you seeing the plan in front of you or the presentation in front of you? Yep, okay, great.
I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name. The R and the N look like an M, so it's Warner.
I know, Warner, yes.
Sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. So in the next few minutes, we'll be looking at why we were doing the community safety and well-being planning, who the partners are involved in this planning, the process to date and the proposed process moving forward, the areas of risk identified across the county and then locally for your plan, and then what the next steps are. Click my screen here. There we go. So really there's 2 pieces to this planning. There's the mandate. So under Bill 175, municipal councils are required to prepare, adopt, and post a community safety and well-being plan by July 1st, 2021. And then there's a second part, which is really why it makes sense to do so. So we know that police often find themselves responding to calls that are complex but not criminal in nature with no chargeable offenses. And just because the police and our emergency personnel are available 24/7 doesn't mean that they're necessarily the right service provider or partner in the community to be calling. So if done well, community safety and well-being will unite partners on intersectoral strategies that address social development priorities. And if you look on the screen and you see that bullseye and you see the green ring on the outside, that's really where we're wanting to focus the bulk of our attention to. The thought is if we put more effort in planning and strategies in social development priorities, then all those other circles will shrink, which is what we're wanting. So by focusing on root cause, we're looking at things from an upstream approach. So this slide is really just wanting to highlight that diversity, equity, inclusion, and involving those with lived experience really underpins how we approached our planning and also the implementation of the strategies. So these are the partners involved in planning, and if you see the lighter gray box, those are the membership or the proposed membership. And then the darker gray box, that's really the kind of the roles or the responsibilities. And so if we move from left to right, you see the GMCC, which has been in place since the beginning of this planning, and that's representatives from each of the municipalities as well as local police. And the county sat on this simply because they supported the phase 1 planning. And they're really responsible for the oversight and the governance of this local plan. And then in phase 2, which is after July 1st, 2021, the local community safety and wellbeing table will form for South Georgian Bay and Springwater. And you can see the membership there. And they're really going to be doing the heavy lifting. That's, the community partners and representatives from municipalities, but also police, Indigenous partners, and those with lived experience will be leading the implementation of the plan. And then also forming in phase 2, the steering committee. And there are 5 planning groups across the county, not including Barrie. Barrie would be a 6 if you consider Barrie. And the idea is that there will be 1 representative from each of the 5 local planning tables. So this group is 1 planning table. So the South Georgian Bay and Springwater is 1 of the planning groups. And there would be a representative sitting on the steering committee. And I don't want to be misleading in calling it a steering committee. I think it's really important to note that the actual governance of your local plan will always rest at the GMCC level. But the steering committee is really there for kind of strategic oversight around some of the administrative processes and how we roll out some of the strategies and the implementation. But the governance and the decisions of this local plan will always remain with the local tables. And then you have the advisory body. And so those are your subject matter experts that have been involved since the beginning and will continue to be involved. And they're really, often when you look at the plan and you see who those members are, they're really the ones taking the lead at some of those other planning tables that already exist around the areas of risk that are identified in the plan. And they will continue to provide that subject matter expertise and guidance for all 8 areas of risk, including the ones that are identified in your plan. And then we have the other planning partners. So those might be tables that already exist that are doing great work in this space. And I think it's really important to note that this is not new. There is work that's happening in this space, and we'll get into it a little bit more, like what makes community safety and well-being a little different. So wanting to make sure that we align any of our work with those other planning tables and the work that they're doing to optimize it. So what is the role of the municipality in this? So in phase 1, it's really about developing and adopting, should you choose to do so, and posting your plan on or before the required date of July 1st. And then phase 2, that's after July 1st, is really, 1 through 5 is really speaking to working as equal partners alongside those other partners that I've mentioned, like police and health and community and social service partners, to support the implementation of the strategies identified in your plan. And so the reporting and the updates, those will actually be informed by the work that's happening at the local table and the steering committee and through the GMCC. How we approached phase 1, really, we really took an evidence-based approach, and our areas of risk were really, we used data to inform the decision-making around that. And then from there, we wanted to make sure we got it right. And so we did very comprehensive and extensive public engagement and consultation, just to make sure we, we were on the right track. And if there was something that we needed to really kind of laser in on or focus in on, we would get that feedback. And then from there, we conducted a online resident survey, and that ran between mid-February and mid-March of this year. And it highlighted the areas of focus that we had landed on in the plan and sought feedback, and that really helped to inform the actual strategies, and you'll find that in the plan. So what you're seeing here, these are the 8 areas of risk that kind of came out across the county, and of the 5 planning groups that I'd mentioned previously, each planning group is looking at between 3 and 4 areas of risk in their plan. Interesting, but probably not a surprise, all 5 planning groups identified mental health and addictions as a very important area to focus on. And I also wanted to point out that any of the data that you would have seen in that plan was prior to COVID. So we can only imagine if we were to refresh that data, which we anticipate doing in the future, you'd probably see that many of those areas of risk have been exacerbated by COVID. So this is what the local plan will focus on. As I mentioned before, mental health and addictions, housing, and access to services. And the next few slides kind of poke into those a little bit and just touch on some of the highlights. So around mental health and addiction, really the focus here is to improve equity, access, and quality of mental health and addiction services across the continuum for all residents. And about a year ago, in March 2020, the provincial government rolled out their Roadmap to Wellness, which is the provincial mental health and addiction strategy. And so they're really getting work underway with that. And you'll notice that the first bullet says it's looking to identify and map out the comprehensive continuum of core services. So the province has determined that there's core services that should be in place for mental health and addictions, and they're in that process of refining that. So we want to make sure that as we move through this work that we align with that. That only makes sense. Some of the other things that kind of lift off the page is around increasing client and family engagement, also building capacity around harm reduction and trauma-informed approaches to care, and also building capacity for people to self-manage their own mental well-being. Also looking at supporting employers to support employees through workplace mental health strategies. We know that many employers have this in place, but we also know that some of the smaller employers struggle with this and struggle knowing where to start. And so that's why it came up loud and clear through our consultation, and that's how it landed in the strategies. And then the last piece is around a measurement metric. So housing, so we know that there's great work and extensive work being done. We know there's a 10-year affordable housing strategy. So we're certainly not looking to run interference with that. We want anything we do, we want to support that. And so some of the things that kind of lift off the page here is looking at increasing the capacity to best utilize those planning tools that are available to support the development of affordable or attainable housing. And then also really important is once people are housed, helping them to stay housed. So finding housing is challenging for many, but then keeping housing, staying successfully housed is also a challenge. So we see the recidivism rate for homelessness, for people becoming precariously housed on the rise. And we know that, from the markets, we see this is probably an issue that is going to become even more pressing. So timely that it's in the plan. We also want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we stay current and align our work with any local, provincial, or federal strategies around homelessness and homelessness prevention. And then again, the last one is a metric or measurement piece. Access to services. This is, I can't say I have favorites, around these areas of risk, but when completing these plans, this was certainly one that really stood out for me. And I think that there is so much potential around simply because when I was, doing some of the background work on this and, looking in our community, then looking outside our community, then looking provincially and nationally around best practices around access to services, it was pretty fragmented. There really wasn't a lot there. So this section is quite detailed in the plan. And really what we're looking to do is we're taking those 4 domains of access, which, as you can see, there are availability, accessibility, accommodation, and acceptability. And it gives you some examples. The plan goes into it in greater detail. And then identifying what those pieces are under each one, what those enablers are under each one, that would create then our framework. And then we want to overlay that over organizations that service our residents to see how we measure up and where the opportunities are for improvement, because we know that there's opportunities for improvement, especially when we're talking about connecting residents in more rural communities to services. It goes back to that equity piece and the access piece and quality as well. So I think that there's a lot of potential in this area and very exciting potential. So this is a colorful slide, and it might look busy, but bear with me as we kind of work through it together. If we find where we are on this slide, so we're on that left-hand side, this really speaks to that original slide. It might have been slide 5 in the deck that was talking about the planning partners and kind of the structure going into phase 2. So you can see on the outer edge there, you see the GMCC, and that's that local governance for your plan. And then you see the larger circle with the colored rings around it. And those rings are reflective. They're color-coded to the area of risk, as you can see by the legend at the top. And then from there, you'll see a darker gray circle. And that's that one person that's representing this local plan at that steering committee. So that's got the connecting ring around it. And then in the middle, you'll see the advisory body. So you see that it's one advisory body for all 5 plans. And that makes a lot of sense. Now, there's some advisory members that we're going to want to pull in locally because they have local interest in the plan and they only service the local area, and that's okay. But those main advisory body members, they are people who are the CEOs of organizations like CMHA, New Path, and they service all areas. And it really wouldn't make sense to have developed 5 or 6 different advisory bodies, because there are going to be some things with this plan that are common and that make sense to have at kind of that higher level. But then we never want to lose sight of the local approach and the local implementation, because that is different. The residents are different across the county. Their needs are different. The communities are different. The assets are different. And so this structure really allows for the best of both worlds, to leverage where possible some of the common pieces that make sense with our partners and with the planning, but then to have that ability to plan locally for what makes sense in the local community. So this slide is really just an example of, if you look at down the left there, it talks about, mental health and addictions, housing, education, employment. Those are like those 8 areas of risk. And then to the right of that those are some of the existing intersectoral planning tables that have been around for a long time and that are doing great work in this space. And I guess the reason for putting this slide in here is because it kind of instills confidence that a lot of this work is happening, and we want to align with it. And a lot of the players of the advisory body, they actually lead these tables. So it's just confidence that we are going to have those community partners that are going to do the heavy lifting on these plans. So how do you measure work like this? It's not easy. We know that these are complex social issues, and so the solutions and the answers are not linear. The pathway is not linear. They're interconnected. They're intricately linked. There's dependencies. There's enablers for them, and so we know that no municipality or group or person can be held responsible for community level well-being and safety. But we do know that if we work together collaboratively across sectors through coordinated strategies, we can move the needle to the positive and start making some of those improvements. So really, at the end of the day, the goal with these strategies is that once they're implemented, they will have a positive contributory effect rather than a causal relationship to community level safety and well-being, because there's not one thing that you can do that you can say, okay, well, that changed it, because they're so dependent. And that's the secret sauce with, that's kind of like the magic of community safety and well-being, if you want to use that word, is that there's great work happening, but it's often happening in silos. So mental health and addictions really does an amazing job at focusing on mental health and addictions. Housing focuses on housing, education focuses on education, but often they're not connected to each other from like that kind of what it looks like on the ground from someone who's struggling. So someone who's struggling with income, for example, is likely struggling with employment. They might be struggling with housing. So we have to not separate it when we're planning our strategies. We have to plan together. We have to share information together, and we have to measure together and measure the impact. And so really, that's why I believe, this mandate came forward around community safety and well-being. It's not that the province thought that this wasn't already happening, this good work wasn't already happening. It was the connecting it. So the next steps, and when I say next steps, I'm thinking kind of like the next like 4-ish months. Should you choose to do so, adopt and then post your plan on or before the deadline of July 1st, and then work with those community partners to form that local community safety well-being table. And then shortly after that table forms, identify who that person will be from that table that will represent the plan at that kind of joint or regional or countywide steering committee level. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much. Let me just fix my screen here. Okay, before we start discussion, can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Moore. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, questions, comments, council. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, I just wanted to thank Ms. Warner for her guidance and her expertise on getting us to where we are today, and also thank the County of Simcoe and Ms. Simpson specifically with regards to her support and their support to get the township to where we are today. Again, without their support and without their guidance and expertise, the township would not be in the position we are today. We are slated and in a good position to have a plan in place before the July 1st deadline. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions tonight. And I would just say next steps would be subject to council's conversation tonight. The intent was to bring forward a staff report for June 16th to have council officially approve the plan, and then we can have it posted on our website, and then to start to look towards the phase 2 implementation.
Thank you. And on behalf of council, I thank you ladies for helping us along with this. Very much appreciated. Councillors, comments, questions? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a couple of questions about the report itself and the way it was formulated. And very interesting and very informative. Being able to try and put that into a concise package must be fairly tough. But I'm actually asking questions more from the seniors' perspective. I noticed in there that the seniors are considered, but mostly from the fact of their isolation. And I'm just curious to know, I mean, just the isolation in itself and doing surveys through computer and whatnot. Since seniors are already suffering from isolation and a lot of them are not technologically acute, I'm just wondering, do you have representation on there specific to the seniors, or did you have some people at the formative stage focusing in on the issue of seniors, but also on the issue when you're talking about the housing? Was there also consideration giving for improved housing for independent living for seniors? So kind of like, I just want the take on the senior aspect of the well-being plan.
Okay, so I'll address that to Carrie or Colleen, whoever wants to comment on that.
Thank you through your worship to Councillor Cabral. That's a great question, and that's certainly a passion for myself. I've spent most of my career working with seniors, if you know my backstory, so they're always top of mind for me. The plan does not identify any one age group. It makes mention of protective factors and risk factors. But really, as a community plan, we struggle with saying, okay, do we focus on, let's say, mental health? Do we focus on children and youth because we know that's pressing? But we also know seniors struggle with their own mental health. And so when you look at the composition of our advisory body, yes, we did consult with groups and tables that I presented to the Age Friendly. I happen to be a member of the county's Age Friendly committee. And so even the North Simcoe Muskoka Specialized Geriatrics Program, we know that there's age-friendly tables that exist as well. So moving forward, when we look at access to services and you look at those 4 domains, that's when we get into the granularity of, are we missing something here? And I would say that in many cases we are missing something, especially around seniors. We know that to be true, and we know that the pandemic, in many ways, people have been nimble and they've moved online, but we know that that's put an even greater divide when it comes to social isolation. So we're not sure what the future looks like with that, but we know that moving forward, that's something that needs to be part of the discussion at the table. I also happen to sit on a seniors isolation strategy that's actually stemming from your neck of the woods through 211 Community Connections. So this is something that is very, very top of mind. And it is, you will probably see very early on in phase 2 more when you get those updates around seniors issues and them being involved. And you think about people with lived experience and who would be at the table. And so I would hope and I would expect to see that there's somebody who can speak to that at the table, who represents the senior population around housing. Housing specific to seniors, that's something that I think will require more conversation in phase 2. We also know that you do have an affordable housing strategy that you are working towards. So I'm not sure what that is going to look like in the future, but the stabilization piece is really important for seniors right now. Through this planning and just, through the people that I've been connected to, we're hearing that seniors are losing their housing after being housed for 15, 20 years in rental accommodations, and now they're being asked to move. And so that's why the stabilization piece is so important, not just for seniors, but there's certainly a group that a population we need to look at, because there are fixed incomes at play here. So I think you'll have more confidence when we move into that planning in phase 2 that these issues will be identified at that local table.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, please? Okay, I'm not seeing any cards at this point. Certainly it's we've been hearing about this, and it's nice to see it start to get fleshed out, and well, it has been being fleshed out, but certainly we'll look forward to the staff report on this and to getting it finalized before the deadline. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor. My apologies for my internet this evening. Next one was going to be implementation of the first county level, and your thoughts.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, we're not. It's pretty garbled. We can't. Is that a dog or is that a growling sink?
No. My apologies.
Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Can you? Yes.
Yeah, I could actually see people's heads nodding. That's reassuring. So my apologies, and I'll speak quickly, and either to Ms. Warner or Ms. Simpson. With the implications being at the county or regional level, I actually see these services being provided by those levels. What is your take or your understanding of the responsibility of the municipality? Well, I understand that we have a more intimate connection with those who may be requiring the services. I feel that some of these services are better suited at a county or regional level, and just your opinions, please.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, I can answer that.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we, fortunately, at the county, we've been receiving a lot of positive feedback on this process from other municipalities, and we appreciate that input. And so based on that, I've met with my general manager, and we are reviewing our budget preparation for 2022. And specifically dedicating some resources to support the implementation of phase 2. So we're still going through some meetings, and we will take our results and our recommendations to County Council for their consideration. So that is in the works, but I don't have a definitive answer yet, but we are listening to what member municipalities are telling us and input, and trying to find a best solution that helps support this work.
Thank you. Ms. Warner?
Through your worship to the Deputy Mayor. I understand why you're asking the question. I appreciate Colleen's contribution, the answer there too. But it's interesting when you look at this work, it really is going to fall on most of your community partners. The county is certainly going to play a role in this because we know that they have a lot of the services, the social services. But really, when we're looking at employment, and we're looking at mental health and addictions, and we're looking at social connectedness, and it really is not just one partner. And I think that's the intent behind this, is that it's not one partner. And municipalities have asked me, so what role do we play in this when we don't provide services like that? And, there's going to be opportunities for municipalities to potentially consider the assets that they have, whether it be libraries, library space, community centers. What does that look like? What does that contribution look like? So it's not really one community partner that can really pull this together for the residents. It's everybody kind of doing what they do best, but doing it in a coordinated way. So I think that's the exciting part, is that we might look at things a little differently, and partners might look at their role a little differently. And we know that some of the partners have already kind of self-identified that they realize that there's some inequity in how services might be allocated currently. And so this is a nice way to kind of look at it objectively and maybe do a bit of a reset that way.
Good. Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, thank you again, ladies, for presenting and all the help you've given us to this point in time. And we look forward to continuing to finalize this. All right, we have a motion on the floor that the presentation from Carrie Warner and with the assistance of Colleen Simpson regarding community safety and well-being plan be received. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And a confirmatory bylaw, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Moore and Councillor Ma, that bylaw 2021-066 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on June 2nd, 2021, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That is carried. And an adjournment, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Cabral and Councillor Moore. The special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 5:32 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on June 2nd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. We will see you shortly.
And council, if you could use the same link for the 6:30 meeting, please.
Thank you.